Okay, and this is Professor Todd Giles again with AR105. We're about ready to go into the Byzantine art period. Um, we've been talking about the Roman and the early Christian artwork, and I wanted to take just a second here to talk about something that I've touched on a little bit here of how cultures will take Christ or Christianity and put it into its own context in its culture, which I think is a wonderful thing because the Christian church does not dictate art, does not dictate a style, does not dictate um, much about the taste of the artwork. So when we go to various cultures that become Christian, very often they assimilate what goes on in that culture. And this is what really truly happened in Rome and in the Roman Empire. What I have here on the screen are a coin or a couple coins with something, and we see this guy here with sort of a crown with these spikes coming out of it. Here we see a guy in a chariot wearing a crown with spikes coming out of it. And then there's this, looks like a woman with spikes coming out of her head. And here a feminine looking person with horses on either side on this amulet with spikes coming out of her head. Okay, what's going on here? Well, there's a character within the Roman mythology called Saul Invictus. And we see here on the coin S-O-L and then Invic, which means Invictus, or the sun, as in that glowing ball in the sky, the sun unconquered. So we have the sun in a chariot, the personification of God, or the sun god in the chariot coming up and over every day, unconquered. It comes back up every day. And this is very common within Roman art and the Roman culture. Instantly, they would have known who this was. When we as Americans see this, or this, who do we think of? It's the Statue of Liberty. Spikes coming out the top of her head like a crown. It's the bright shiningness here. Statue of Liberty, it's the bright shining effect of liberty within the human heart. But something happened here. This image here, this is from one of the burials underneath St. Peter's Basilica in Rome. This is a mosaic, and you can see it better here, design made up of tiny little tiles. And this is a Christian burial. But on the roof of this chapel, some of it's been damaged here, but on the roof of this chapel, there is this figure of a chariot with horses, and then riding in the chariot is this male figure with what looks like a round thing around his head and then somewhat look like spikes coming out. But it's not. It is not Saul Invictus. It's Jesus Christ, the victorious Son, unconquered Son of God. And what looks like the spikes are changed a little bit, that it actually becomes the form of a cross. And this becomes a halo. This is one of the earliest representations of Christ with a halo. We saw one from the catacombs earlier, but this one is very well done. Okay, so some people see this as very troubling because they see this mythological figure being transported to be Christ. That's something to be discussed. If we had a good discussion panel here, we could do that. But I just wanted to show you that. So it's something that you do see. Here's also a couple other really good mosaics from Ravenna. And if you go to Vimeo or to YouTube, look up the Mausoleum of Galla, Placidia, and you'll see some great videos of the inside of this mausoleum, of this Christian from the late Empire. into the Byzantine time almost. Okay, so take a look at that, and we have Christ here, no beard, toga. Here he is again with a halo, unshaven, toga, but it's purple here, denoting royalty. And he's giving away the loaves and the fishes to the apostles. Okay, so very Roman. Okay, so let's go on into the Byzantine and see what we have here. Now, a little bit of the history. The Roman Empire basically is this area, and it became so large that it was unable to be administered as it was. They were being invaded on almost every side, and something needed to be done. Rome was becoming quite a cesspool then. So what Constantine did was go over here between Europe and Turkey, and he created the city of Constantinople. And it's on the site of a small town called Byzantium, which is where we get the word Byzantine. Okay, so when you see Byzantine, think Constantinople. And he divided the empire in half. West administered from Rome, east administered from Constantinople. And they were to be co-equal parts of the empire. So this time period we call the Byzantine period. Talked a little bit about the formation of the empire. The artwork of this time is very simplified. The portraits are not about who that individual is. It's not made to look like them. It's very minimal in the individualization. It's just about the story and representing a person, not that person. And one thing that happens is the proportions get all out of whack. Large heads, small bodies, big arms, small legs. It just is not the same craft as it was during the classical period with the Greeks and the Romans. Okay, and some of the main forms of artwork here are the icons and the mosaics. And the foremost architectural piece during this period most definitely is the Hagia Sophia, or the Church of the Holy Wisdom. Now, as you look at this image, erase out of your mind these tall missile-like structures. Those are minarets, and those were built after the Islamic forces overtook Constantinople and renamed it Istanbul. And now, for centuries, this has been a mosque. Now, it's actually a museum. Hopefully, it will be able to stay that way. But from the outside, what we see here is this great dome, almost the same size as the Pantheon in Rome, except it's up on this huge base. To support the structure, the main base is built with arches. Here's one on this side, here's an apse, and inside there's an arch. On the other side and on this side, it mirrors what's on its opposite side, so an arch and an apse. As we go inside, it's this huge space, one of the largest spaces ever created inside of a building. And this area right there, those are tourists. So you get an idea just how immense the inside was. For centuries and centuries, this was the largest building in the world. This dome has survived. This is the third dome to be built by the original creators. And over a couple decades, 2 other domes actually collapsed until they finally got this one right. Now, what you can see here is this is evidence that this was a mosque, the Islamic writing. When the Muslims overtook Istanbul, the first place they went was to capture the Hagia Sophia. And what they did was whitewash over or destroy a lot of the mosaics. Thankfully, they disobeyed orders and they only plastered over the artworks. And years later, archaeologists were able to actually discover these great and wonderful mosaics of the Christian faith. that were hidden for so many years. Now, for some of the best Byzantine artwork, we can go back over to Ravenna, over here in Italy, on the Adriatic Sea, up near Venice. And this is an administrative town set up by the Emperor Justinian, although the evidence shows that he really did not visit it. It was a royal town for the imperial family to visit, and this was an imperial church. It's called San Vitale. Okay, and on the outside, it looks somewhat plain. We see some visitors here, so you get an idea of the scale, but it's brick. It's not very colorful, somewhat small. It's in the round, sort of octagonal. It doesn't look like much until you go on the inside. Now, here's a floor plan of this church. Now, what do we have here? We have a nave, sort of. Here, right here is where the altar would be. And there's an apse. And then there is an aisle going all the way around. And this is called an arcade or a colonnade, various names for it. And then here would be also part of the nave. So here's where the parishioners would be and looking inward. And we're going to look at artwork over here, and on this apse. This is the view. Here's the altar with our back into the apse, and we're looking forward into the nave. And look at the color. Absolutely spellbinding. Everything that you see here is not painted, it's real. This is real marble from all over the empire. These are mosaics by the best artists of the day with these bright colors. Nothing is painted, nothing is stucco, it's all real. Here's another view looking into the apse. I love this picture of this tourist. There's the altar. Here are the mosaics, and this is the piece that we're going to look at extensively here in a second, and then these three windows looking out. I love this view, looking up to see the color. That is glass with gold on the back of it, little tiny pieces of glass covered with gold on the back so that the light travels through the glass, hits the gold, reflects back, and it shimmers as you walk up to it. We're going to look at the piece here, but first let's take a look at this. And this, I believe, is on our list for the midterm exam. But we see Christ here sitting on the globe of the universe. It's a throne, and he's sitting on it, so he controls the whole universe. Down below him, we see the three rivers from Revelation coming out, watering the land. On either side of them, there are angels. We could call them cherubim. Jesus, is clean shaven, very much in a Roman design, wearing the purple toga with the halo, and it has a cross in it denoting that he is Christ. No other entity with a halo would have that. And on one side, there's a great church person, and on the other side, this is the emperor himself donating the church. So this is a little toy church that he's giving to God, asking him for favor to bless this church. But this is a mosaic, little tiny pieces of stone, and this is Christ Pantocrator, the Christ who is all powerful. And we start to see this over and over again in Byzantine art. Usually it's just the head and shoulders of Christ holding the book of life, usually holding an orb controlling the universe. And if it's Greek, he starts to have a beard. And that becomes more of what we see as the standard image of Christ as what we have today in our culture and in our art.